I tried to build actually a copycat of Airbnb for Canada. Back in the days, we thought we could still beat Airbnb.
How did you end up deciding to start Element Agents?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story. So I built something throughout the whole summer of 2024. And the guy completely ghosts me, and there was no real way for me to chase him. I decided to call all of his competitors and sell this platform to all of his competitors so that he would regret it for like not paying me.
There's a lot of people out there that are educating the world about AI. Who do you trust the most?
Andre is like the farm to table of explaining AI. He's managing to still make it super simple and understandable for my mom.
I love it. Today, I am joined by Vlad de Ziegler. His background is unique. He didn't start in software, actually. He started in finance and mining. Yes, actually that type of mining of gold and silver. Now he's based in Lisbon building AI agents for enterprises. I think he's proof that you don't need a traditional CS degree to make waves in the AI space. We talk about him starting his YouTube channel as well as his company and his philosophy of solving business problems first and using AI second. Here's my conversation with Vlad. Enjoy. Hey Vlad, thanks so much for being part of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, and likewise. I know we had a fun way of meeting each other. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But, the reason why I want to talk to you is I think you have a very unique background in even how you even stumbled upon building AI, right? You started with a degree in economics where you went to Montreal and Chile. Then you decided to travel half a way around the world to London, got a master's in probably the most unique sounding degree I've ever heard, where you do the intersection of engineering and finances for natural resources and metals.
That's right.
But now you build AI automation and AI agents for enterprises, both large and small. How did you even make that jump?
Yeah. So I think the jump, I've always done jumps, if that makes sense. So from the very beginning, I've moved from one industry to another. So it's always felt like natural for me. When I finished high school, I did a bunch of different internships in hospitality. I worked in a mine in Rwanda. I worked in vineyards in South Africa. So I did a bunch of different stuff. And then throughout my studies, actually always got into the tech industry. I tried to build actually a copycat of Airbnb for Canada. Back in the days, we thought we could still beat Airbnb. That was in 2012.
Okay.
So I would say I've always been open to trying out new things. And I think that upon graduating from Imperial College in Earth Science, I was interested in finance, but also in the tech industry. It was picking up. There was a lot going on. And I always try to keep a foot in a specific industry, but always be the tech guy or the person who's open to implementing new technologies in that industry. And naturally, at some point, I was just fed up with working in the industry itself. And I decided to go full time in the tech industry.
I'm really interested in what would you say your degree in London? What was it called specifically?
It was called Metals Energy Finance. So all in all, at the end of the degree, I was supposed to be able to look at a pre-feasibility study, which is basically whenever you want to invest in a mine, you have two dimensions. The first one is are there minerals? Is there, for instance, enough gold in the mine? Are we confident about the amount of reserves that there is in the mine? And does it make sense financially to extract that gold, let's say? So it was a joint degree between the Earth Science department, so the Royal School of Mines, where we basically learned about geostatistics to evaluate, because, at the end of the day, when you invest in the mine, you're never 100% sure about the amount of gold or resources that you're going to have. It's very random.
It's random, but I feel looking at your trajectory, looking back, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The reason being is I know you really focus on, I think you say, bringing your AI to your go-to-market, right? With your current work and what you do specific with Element Agents. How did you end up deciding to start Element Agents?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story in the sense that I basically moved 2 years ago to Lisbon
Hmm.
Portugal, and I really wanted to build my own thing, and I gave myself 6 months. Basically, I was a product manager in agri-tech, and it was not going super well. I was not very happy in that role, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going in circles. I need to give myself a kick to try out new things, be a bit more bold. And so I moved to Lisbon, gave myself 6 months. And then basically what I did is I tried to build a bunch of different things. Very quickly, I stumbled upon Brandon's videos on YouTube on how to build with CrewAI. And this was basically a big rabbit hole that I'm still in. I haven't left that rabbit hole. And I was super excited about everything that we could do with it. So I tried to build different businesses. So I built like a custom travel guide that I
Hmm.
would sell to hotels. So every hotel in every neighborhood, they could decide, okay, I live in this specific area, and the guide is gonna look up for all the key places in that area, suggest restaurants, and then adapt the whole content to based on people's interests. So if they're into architecture, it would suggest like architectural like places that are architecturally interesting and so on. I made $28 in my first month, so I was not gonna live off that, but it was a fun first experience going to hotels, trying to pitch that and so on. And then basically I asked around people. I asked around. I was running out of money, and I started to attend different meetups and where I would just say, hey guys, I know how to build agents. If you need anything, just let me know, and we can build something and figure out something. So I was trying to go down this consultancy route, and and then basically I built this whole automation for a client in Florida, and this guy never paid me. So I built something throughout the whole summer of 2024. And come September, the guy completely ghosts me, and there was no real way for me to chase him for that amount and whatever. I was just not in the mood of chasing him for that. And so what I decided to do was to call all of his competitors and sell this platform to all of his competitors so that he would regret it for like not paying me. So I essentially cold called a bunch of people, got some leads online, and that's how I got my like other two clients for that same tool, which I essentially productized and that I called Firescan. And bit by bit, basically I was basically just trying to recoup a bit of my time / investment into that platform, but I was not passionate about it. I just saw it initially as a just one-off project. But so I still try to make the most of that tool and tech that I had built. I sold it for a couple of months to certain clients with a retainer and so on. But bit by bit, I have friends who ask me for help on some of their business challenges to set up some automations and so on. And I realized that I was a lot more interested and excited about building new things, understanding the business challenges that my friends were facing, and use the tech as an enabler to solving business problems. I think I'm more excited about how to fix a business problem than just pushing a tech solution, because like you
Yeah.
and we're probably going to talk about it, it's not my core background, and I'm not excited about that as much as I am about solving like business problems.
Yeah. It sounds just your whole career, right? You always
Yeah,
focus on the problem
yeah.
and you use whatever solution you could find, right, to solve for it. And I am curious, obviously AI has been here for many, many years, right? I feel most people in tech were introduced to it very
Hmm.
quickly at the end of 2022 when ChatGPT came out. And then slowly every year, right? More and more people in tech. When did you sort of find and realize, oh, this is a tool that I could use?
Hmm.
When was the first time that you were very excited to actually use it as a mechanism to solve a problem?
Yeah. So it's funny because there's this kind of stamp today to say I got into AI before it was cool.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I would write something like I got into AI once it was cool, just to, put everything on the table and just be transparent. But then I realized it's actually not that true, because I've actually been in the space, or I first looked into it back in 2015,
Hmm.
even 2014, I think, because in Montreal, when I studied there is a lot of hype. A lot of the researchers like Yoshua Bengyo
Yeah.
were already like famous back then there. So, and I think he's a McGill alumni. So I actually really learned about deep learning back then, and I never thought I would ever get into that space because it just always felt too far off from what I was doing, day in day out. But I was always super curious and read about it back then. And then fast forward to 2020 when COVID happened, I was in Chicago working for this large trading commodities trading company, and it was locked down. I was living in my small apartment in Chicago, and obviously we couldn't do anything. So I got back into coding because I did like a coding bootcamp, sorry, back in 2019, and which was with like Ruby on Rails and a little bit
Mm.
of JavaScript. So I learned how to build websites basically back in 2019, and then COVID happened, and I decided to get into Python. So I did a bunch of modules, and I learned how to build my first algorithms using ML models
That's
and so
I
on.
knew we were gonna be good friends because Ruby on Rails, like.
You can see through it.
So how about this? Let me ask you a follow-up question. You know, there's a lot of people out there that are educating the world about AI and agents. Who do you follow? Who do you trust the most?
Yeah. So I don't watch as many tutorials as I used to.
Hmm.
Whenever there's like a deep dive from Andrej Karpathy, I'm gonna listen to it over a couple of days because they're always super long. Otherwise, I follow Andrew Nang from
Deep learning?
Deep Learning. That's
Yeah.
right, and then a couple of like other developers on Twitter and LinkedIn actually. And so this is probably like my news diet. So basically, depending on what I need, if I want to understand the concept, because there's like a paradigm shift, I'm gonna go into like more details and something more technical. And if I just want to take a step back, so recently I was doing a workshop, and I really wanted to simplify as much as I could, like and explain how LLMs work. And so that's when I watched Andrew Karpathy's 3 hour and a half, I think, tutorial on LLMs. And this guy is the only person I know who can dissect such a complex topic and make it accessible to my family. He's going through all that layers by himself. Whereas I am, Brandon, we're all standing at different layers, at like interpreting, simplifying different concepts at different levels. But Andre is like the farm to table of explaining AI. He's at the forefront of it. He's the founder of OpenAI, and he's managing to still make it super simple and understandable for my mom and my sisters.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, I agree. One question I have, you are very well traveled. How many countries have you lived in?
I lived in, I lost track of it, but yeah, I mean, it depends what you call live in. For me, I consider as soon as I have a routine somewhere,
Hmm.
I consider that I've lived there. Probably like 12 or between 12 and 15. But that's also I cheated. I cheated a little bit with my previous company
Yeah.
when I was in trading because I did like a rotation program, a graduate program kind of, where I went to Ivory Coast for 2 months and a half. Then I went to Nigeria and then to Chicago.
That's very cool. I feel it helps you, right? You know, pivoting to sort of now where you live today, Lisbon. I'm really curious. Usually, you know, in tech, you hear London, you hear Paris, right? As sort of maybe the tech meccas of Europe. How is the tech scene in Lisbon?
It is small. It is small for sure. But because it is small, it is interesting because there's like an interesting tax scheme in Portugal, to be frank. So it draws people who are either super successful and doing their own little thing under the hood that are doing really well for themselves, but they don't necessarily have like massive teams, but they are, successful entrepreneurs. And then you have people, and then it's like it's like much cheaper than other places. So if you need to extend your runway to play around and really give yourself all the chances to build something on your own, I think it's also like interesting to this to this crowd. So there's this mix of successful repeat entrepreneurs who have basically money to invest in houses in Portugal and have like those bootstrap businesses with like super young, hungry entrepreneurs who are trying to build their first venture. And somehow whenever you go to these different tech events, you have those two worlds colliding, and it works well because no one is there to raise money from VCs. Everyone is focused on building real stuff. There is very little noise, and I think this is what you hear about San Francisco and why people do really well there. Obviously there's all the VC world, but in terms of distraction, it's very distraction free in Lisbon. It's very much a place where you go out, you exercise, and then you can work hard if you want.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. And you decided on Lisbon when I met you in person about Lisbon Agent Week and
Hmm.
just events like this. How is it? And you're part of the orchestration teams now.
Yeah. So I host this. I have this community called Lisbon SaaS Founders, which I took over on Meetup. It's something quite casual, and I just host one event once a month, and we have around 100 people meeting, and we just organize pizzas, beers, and like a couple of workshops, and it's always fairly casual. And
For your experience, right? How is creating these communities in Lisbon,
mhm.
right? These tech communities, like what have you seen worked really well? What hasn't?
So I think it's you either have like big companies trying to host and organize those meetups, but you have 20% of the time where they're going to pitch their services and it feels a little bit off and brute forced and just not enjoyable and fake. And then you have the other extreme of events organized by people that are a bit too chaotic and too disorganized. So there's maybe a sweet spot between bringing companies like Post Hog, Superbase, with whom
Mhm.
I've organized events with, or will be hosting more events with. And you're just trying to have those nice companies to support some casual events. So this is what I've been trying to do, where we're not pitching solutions, we're just gathering people, and it's kind of a meetup in a nice setting.
No, that does resonate. I think you're right. Some events can feel very structured, very professional. It
Hmm.
feels inauthentic because it feels like you're just being sold to,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
I think one thing I've learned in my 6+ years at Google as a part of go-to-market and sales is that no one really likes the feeling of being sold to, period.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I do like that you try to focus on the experience in Lisbon to balance, as you said, right? The people who are just there to want to build, to connect, focus on that.
Exactly. And I honestly built my community of other communities, which I really liked. So a lot of the people who would attend my events are people that I see at other events. So, and because we're all building on our side and coming back to the fact that it's mostly like bootstrapped founders traveling, always a bit on the move, and it's kind of a lonely adventure. It's
Hmm.
nice to have those moments every month where we can sync and just have a beer. And
Yeah,
sometimes we talk
yeah.
about work, but actually very rarely we end up talking about work.
No, no, that sounds amazing. I
It's,
do want to talk about, well, first, congrats on your 1 year on YouTube. Um,
thanks.
what's sort of the top learnings you've had after 1 year on your YouTube channel? Why did you create it? And then also what are the top learnings?
So I decided to create it because, so coming back to what I was saying earlier, I bumped into Brendan Hancock's videos on YouTube, where he's an amazing teacher, educator on everything AI. And what I realized is, not only I saw his channel grow, so I was like, okay, maybe I can do the same and like grow it. But then I think more realistically, I realized that there are so many different AI tools everywhere that the only way to become relevant, like you cannot learn, and maybe this will change, but as of up until now, you couldn't learn how to build agents in school. So the only way you could learn it was watching videos, going through docs, repos, and stuff. And to make sure, the only way to know whether you actually mastered the tool is by explaining it. And when you do a video and you do a bunch of retakes and you need to explain every line or of code, it forces you to like truly understand how things work. And for me, I thought it would be like a good way to master these new tools, use YouTube as an accountability tool or technique,
Hmm.
and and then just use that content to then repurpose it on LinkedIn and just show and to potential clients, this is what I've built. I can build it for you. This is a proof that I know how to do it, and so on.
Yeah. When did you sort of realize that since you're a finance, guy, like that your investment in building your YouTube channel, you started actually seeing, the benefits either by leads coming in
Hmm.
or just getting, the experience that you wanted?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I look at it from a pure financial standpoint, I'm still in the red. Still haven't made money off my YouTube channel. I'm not. I don't do enough views to get ads, and I have an editor. Or I used to have an editor. So all in all, I probably lost money on YouTube. But I like to say that the combination of creating tutorials, repurposing the content on LinkedIn, hosting events where I do the demo also in real life. Then eventually I just have people who think about me and I'm kind of top of mind whenever they have something that pops up. So even if they don't click that calendar link on my YouTube video to book a
Yeah.
session to then turn into a customer, somehow it works. I cannot exactly tell you where it starts, where it ends in the process, but it does add value. And the way I realized that was that I think we all hear all the time that creating a brand is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And basically when you live in Lisbon, that's another thing also. The market, I'm not gonna, I don't have any Portuguese clients. So the only people I can sell to are anywhere but in Portugal. And maybe this will change. So I don't have the luxury of just going and showing up to events in London or in Paris. I need to get out there and do all the stuff that people are too scared to do online to stand out.
No, that makes sense. And, that does lead to another question I had is how do you stay on top of the latest and greatest, right? Being somewhere, we could say Lisbon may not be the tech mecca of Europe, right? But even Europe,
It's
right,
fair to say.
isn't in close gravity to San Francisco, where you could argue that's where all, majority of the information is coming from, right?
Yeah. So it's quite interesting that you say that because so I think in short on YouTube, you can follow Brandon and a bunch of other guys who teach you about LangChain, Blend AI, Firecrawl, all these tools. You can learn about these tools on Twitter, on YouTube. And the day I realized that I was not running too far behind, maybe I certainly am in many respects, but when I met you in San Francisco back in August, you always take the car from the airport, get to the center, and you have all these billboards with all the different tech companies
Yeah.
that just raise money and that are like promoting themselves. And I knew like 90% of the names that were there. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm actually up to date with what's going on, or at least with those that are raising money. So I think that the gap between the speed at which the information spreads about I think the gap is quite minimal, at least at my level. Maybe in larger org, you see a bigger discrepancy. But if you're just like a solopreneur or just someone curious about it, I think the gap is almost zero.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned the billboards. I think everyone that's in tech that
Mm-hmm.
that visits San Francisco for the first time, that's the number one comment I always hear
Yeah.
is because you don't see these billboards pretty much anywhere else in the
No.
world, right? It's just an SF. You see tech companies advertising in billboards, right?
Yeah.
And there's a few of these billboards that are there's history to it, right?
Interesting.
One thing too that I wanted to ask is you through YouTube, right? And also the work you've done at Lisbon and just hosting events,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you got a lot of experience in what is a good demo, right? When you are creating one or you're watching one, what do you think makes a demo a good demo?
Yeah. I think what's interesting with agents, the first time I demoed CrewAI, I think
Mm-hmm.
people were fascinated and almost started clapping when they saw those prompts and the agents, interacting with the agents communicating with one another in the terminal. And CrewAI is quite good at the UI, or just the logs are just interesting in green, different colors, different
Yeah.
emojis and stuff. So it's a little bit silly, but it just felt it feels very futuristic. So I think that if you show people how it works under the hood, it's kind of exciting, even if they don't understand what it is. So maybe there are two aspects. The first one is making sure that they understand what the demo is about, something tangible, so you have a use case that people can relate to. So that's maybe like the core thing to making a good demo. And then the second thing is showing how it works under the hood, or like the magic aspect of how it works under the hood. It doesn't even matter if people understand. I think like having a wow moment, whether it's with the output
Mm-hmm.
or how the process works,
Yeah.
is kind of a nice thing to have.
How do you know that you have a wow moment in a demo?
I mean, sometimes I have it, even if I build the thing myself, I'm still stunned. So I'm like, okay, I've done this like 50 times. And if I'm still stunned, I guess the people who are seeing this for the first time, they are, feeling the same. And then otherwise, I think with AI in general, anything that is unusual, so converting, for instance, like multimodality, I know that this is always super impactful, showing how you can convert some audio into like an image, or transcribe a video and explain exactly what happened, or some image recognition, some things that are quite easy to demo, but they have a super big impact, because people always have these preconceived ideas that it's always been very difficult to get to these results until now, and now you can generate them much faster. So breaking those mental barriers or preconceived ideas that people have about what you can do with the tech today is usually quite exciting also to the audience.
Yeah. No, and I'm curious, what was that demo that you said people clapped? It sort of
Yeah.
reminds me of, back a few years, I don't know how long, but it was common for people to clap when the plane lands, right?
Yeah.
The idea of clapping is just not necessary. But you had that sort of
Yeah.
similar moment with your demo. I'm curious, what
Yeah.
was the demo itself?
So it was actually the first time I ever demoed CrewAI. So that was back in January 2025, I think. And so early, yeah, just about a year ago. And it was about, so basically I was trying to create like a profile for like David Goggins, let's say. So you want
Mm-hmm.
to take an influencer and you want to customize or analyze that person, and generate a report about their values, about their strengths, challenges, whatever. And I was then using that also for a client to like personalize chatbot. It was basically like a simplified version of something I had built for a client.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the way the agent worked was it would go on YouTube, extract the transcripts, analyze it, go on Instagram, extract the videos, convert them into MP3, extract the transcript, feed the two pipelines into one general LLM to then extract things like, and then you had a specialized agent that would analyze to extract the values of that
Mm-hmm.
person, another one that would extract the challenges. And you would see those 6 agents, I think, running in parallel, each of them analyzing, and extracting those stuff, converting that into structured output, and then forming that profile. And then you would see on the UI, hey, this is your final report, telling you exactly everything that you need to know about that person. And just the fact that you would see all these agents running in parallel and all these prompts, going fast back and forth to then generate something on a nice UI.
Yeah.
And I think what's also quite interesting and impressive is when you manage to show the reasoning capabilities of an agent. So you give it like a bunch of tools and you're like, if I had access to that same level information, would I actually know which tool to call? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the agent is really good at figuring that out super quickly. And you're like, wow, actually, I would have taken me more time to figure that I should have looked up in the inventory that, with this query to see if the product is available. It would have taken me longer. So that's when you also get excited and understand the potential um, of AI, of agentic frameworks.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, what you mentioned is once the agents that you build, right, you orchestrate it, you're the one behind the wheel, but once it starts doing things better than you, right, it's like, oh, that was quick, right? That's always impressive to see in a demo. I'm pretty sure. I know you mentioned a lot about frameworks, and I know you've done a lot of work in educating on your YouTube channel about frameworks. One, just a quick, like, can you give an overview of CrewAI, Google ADK, and maybe like LangChain, how you at least see the differences between the three?
Yeah. So to be honest, like I use them more like sequentially. So I
Mm-hmm.
first bumped into CrewAI, used it a lot, then came across Llama Index. I actually didn't really. I used bits and pieces of LangChain,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never really like fully used it. Llama Index, I've used it a bit more, and then ADK. In terms of the key functionalities and how they are different, I think ADK, what I've really liked about it is how the different types of agents that you can have. I think with CrewAI, it was a bit more limited initially. You would basically mostly have like sequential agents, whereas with ADK, you already had this root agent that would then delegate. So there was this UI, or just like this, the interactions were just very different with the agents, and the use cases that you could build with how ADK was set up. I would say like were a bit wider, or that's at least the impression that I had when I first looked into the doc. And then ADK also, what was quite nice was how deeply integrated it was with GCP, Google Cloud. Whereas with CrewAI, it's basically a very easy framework to use. But then as soon as you want to deploy, it becomes very pricey and a bit like price prohibitive. So I then just naturally went to using ADK because it's a lot cheaper to deploy, and then you have the amazing starter pack that you can use now to push it to prod and make it quite robust fairly quickly.
Oh, that's very. I'm curious, how do you, in this day and age, frameworks, right? Their whole purpose is to get developers that are writing code from point A to point B, right? A lot quicker. And because it's so much easier to write code and to develop, there's a lot more frameworks coming out. How do you go about digesting a new framework very quickly, right? And then deciding, is this something to adopt in the way I develop code, or is this something to sort of just take a pause?
So I had this actually discussion with a client 2 weeks ago, I think, where he told me about Agno. He always sends me like a bunch of emails,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Hey, do you know this thing? Do you know that?"
Yeah.
And so on. And there are so many tools that come out every week that it's impossible to keep up. But then I always go through the docs to just get a sense of how useful and different it is from whatever I've been using. I would say that usually what I say is that 85% of the frameworks do exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a matter of what you want to do with it. Maybe for the first iteration, for the demo, you could pretty much use all of them. But then where do you want to go, in the next iteration and the one after that one and the subsequent one? Like, what is the direction of what you want to build? And then I'm going to look at, okay, does this framework have this functionality? So to give you a concrete example, he wanted to use this new framework called Agno. And so I had never used it. And so I quickly looked through the doc. I was like, do I really want to go and learn about a new framework? But then his business challenge was that he wanted to roll out a bunch of agents and make them accessible to his team, and make sure that not everyone has the right the right levels of access to the different things. It has to be like a super simple and clean UI. So I was like, okay, now I start to understand why you want this framework. And then what I realized is that it has like a framework, but then also this chat UI functionality to which people can just log into and interact with without even touching the code. And I was like, okay, well, this is something that ADK does not necessarily offer. You have the web thing to test out in development, which is already an advantage over what CrewAI has. But when it comes to actually using it in production, so yeah, I would say it starts with it sounds a bit cliche, but with the end user and the use case and the hard constraints that you have on what you're trying to build. And this helps you identify the remaining 10%, which framework I should go with.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the core functionalities, because it's always in the details, I would say.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good way to sort of frame yourself, is try to look at the deltas of any new, if they're solving a similar problem or
Exactly.
framework, is look at the deltas, right? Because then you could really decide, as you said, depending on the problem, one framework's going to make more sense than another, right?
Exactly.
And there's many. I am curious, back to sort of your work that you do at Element Agents, right? You work with companies both big and small. What is a common thing, or what are the top few things that you see companies get wrong when they are venturing into AI automation or building their own agents?
Yeah. So I would say, depending on whom you're talking to, and I guess this is evolving very quickly also, but people have different levels of understanding of what you can do with AI. And some people want to get into something super sophisticated very quickly. And usually I would say the biggest misconception is that you can get to building out a bunch of agents from the get-go that will work, all the time, and so on. So usually I try to stay away from agents for as long as possible and just look at their stack, look at the quality of the data that they have, if they have any gaps in that. And then basically I'm trying to introduce agents, in like step 4 whenever we try to implement AI in their mostly go-to-market in my case.
And I think also, right, a lot of companies get excited at the foundational models, whichever they are, right?
Yeah.
And many times will sort of show, hey, I have this foundational model. I did this quick little prompt. I'm excited. But as you sort of mentioned and previously, that path to production, right? There's a lot of details there. in that journey from here's an idea that I know AI can solve, but I have to productionize is what are some of the pitfalls that you've seen?
I don't know if they are necessarily pitfalls. Just you very often have this thing where they put everything in a master prompt and they're like, "Hey,
Mm,
it works. Let's keep it that way." And then you have to argue back and say, "Hey, context engineering is quite important. You have to reduce the odds of the LLM to get it wrong. So maybe today it doesn't look like it's relevant to put everything in a vector database, but if you want to keep like your data sane, make sure that you can keep versions. Make sure that if you have 200 new examples from evals that you want to add to the model to get better at predicting and suggesting whatever next step you're trying to automate, let's add a bit, let's try to make it a little bit more robust. And so there's usually this debate with the why is it taking so long, why is it so expensive, or why can't we do it like that? And you need to have this conversation and sometimes just accept that also, yeah, there's always this trade-off between keeping the client happy but then making sure that you can keep your boss happy putting everything in a master prompt, but then you're going to get so many feedback at some point from the users who are going to tell you that this is just breaking all the time, like what is going on, and then you have to like collect connect all the pieces, and sometimes it's a little bit fragile, and you have to strike a balance between not over engineering from the start to make sure that you get some velocity and you can iterate on everything, but at the same time build something that you're not going to be spending hours on collecting feedback, and you can automate some of that to some
yeah.
extent. Otherwise, you're just stuck doing maintenance.
Yeah, it's also reminds me of the classic issue that a lot of engineers have is should I spend, 5 hours to automate this one thing or
Yeah,
spend 30 minutes just to do it and
yeah.
not need to spend the 5 hours? Um, I'm also curious in your tech stack, right? Like when you get a new project,
hmm
what is the default tech stack that you like to leverage today? From, the IDE, the CLI, anything.
Yeah. So usually I use Cursor. I don't actually use Cloud Code that much, even though sounds like everyone
Yeah.
wants us to use it now. So I don't use it as much. So yeah, no, mostly Cursor. And then in terms of the stack that I use, I don't use the Gemini CLI. I just simply, yeah, once again, just use Cursor. Then database, I tend to use Superbase
Mm,
for auth
nice.
as well. I do use sometimes Firebase as well. In terms of agentic frameworks, I go ahead with ADK. I code in Python and then add if there's any UI need. I use Next.js and I then deploy on Railway. I actually like Railway a lot to deploy like full stack applications where you can deploy the backend on a specific service and the front end in a different service in the same project. It's quite easy to maintain. And then the LLMs that I use, I tend to go ahead with, I tend to use a lot Gemini for the workflows. And then when I code, I tend to use Opus if I'm in a rush and I need to find a solution fast.
Yeah. Speaking of being on a rush, you were part of Google Cloud's AI Agent Bake Off
Mm-hmm.
episode 2. For
Mm-hmm.
those that don't know, think of it as the British Bake Off, right? But for building agents instead of cakes, you're building agents. And for whatever reason, Google Cloud allowed me to be the host of that show. And Vlad here was one of the contestants. So maybe you could tell from your experience, how did you even get asked to be part of this, right? How was the
Yes.
process of actually joining this initiative?
Yeah. So coming back to what I was saying earlier, where I do like a bunch of YouTube videos without really knowing where it's going to lead me, I actually created a tutorial, not even a tutorial, a listicle on which framework is best in 2025. And I think I was comparing CrewAI to ADK to OpenAI's
Mm-hmm.
Agent SDK. And Frank Guan, who works at Google, reached out saying that he had watched my tutorial, my video, that he really liked it, and that he would like to invite me to for the Agent Bake Off. When I first got this email and I saw at google.com, I was like, this is a scam. I don't even know who this guy is. I'm not gonna reply. And then because there is this calendar link in my description, he still scheduled a meeting. and then I went for a run, and then I got back and I realized that I had this meeting starting in 2 minutes. And I said, okay, it's for sure a scammer, but I'm still gonna show up on that call. And then I saw Frank in his super nice office, a Google office, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
in San Francisco. And then I immediately understood what it was about. So super fun, and I immediately said yes because it was an amazing opportunity for me to go there. So yeah, you never really know where who's watching basically your tutorials, even if you get like a couple of hundreds of views. Sometimes you have some people who can connect you to great experiences.
No, that's. I mean, like you said, right? There's an ROI there to your YouTube channel, at least, right?
Yeah,
It's hard, like you
exactly.
said, to calculate how
Yeah.
much you know impact being part of the show is gonna
Hmm.
have, but I could say it looked like you had fun. I know it was tough because you had to fly from Lisbon
Yeah.
to San Francisco, and then you had 5 hours to write code. You were paired with a good friend of mine, Luis Sala, who was your buddy during that. And then you have me screaming at you, reminding you, hey, you have 2 hours left. You have 30 minutes left. How was it actually developing code in that environment?
um, it's interesting because sometimes I can achieve a lot in 5 hours, but the pressure of being time constrained, having cameras filming us, being told what to do, having to work with someone else when I'm used to just
Mm-hmm.
code by myself, there are like there are like a lot of new variables to deal with, and being sleep deprived. I think altogether it made it like surprisingly harder than I had anticipated. And I would say that what was really the most frustrating part was setting up all the environments.
Mm,
I lost
okay.
like an hour and a half out of the 5
Yeah.
just figuring that out. And then as soon as something basically like, setting up the right Python and environment blocks you for an hour, then you just lose focus and you just kind of panic because you see the clock ticking,
Yeah.
and even if it's, just for fun, it's not like a good feeling to
No, and I think we learned a lot from that episode. I think it was by far the most challenging of the three that we've done, and hopefully we get to do more this year. I think the thing that you may not see, right, if you see the episode, is that 5 hours is really not enough to build something that you could show as a demo in what we asked, right? Because remember, we asked all of you to build with the agent to agent protocol, which essentially lets you to have one agent talk to another. Imagine if you had a chatbot on a bank website,
hmm
right? We asked the teams to talk to that chatbot, but create a whole new experience around that.
hmm
That's not easy, right? Because many people, and I think at the time A2A was the protocol was very new. So we wanted to see pushing the limits of how quickly can people learn a new
hmm
framework or a new protocol, and also how do you build in this way that's very novel, right?
hmm
But I still think what you and Luis built, you guys should feel very proud because I can't stress how intimidating it is writing code when you have a camera about 10,
yeah.
10 inches from your face. It's
Exactly.
very intimate.
Yeah, they're especially as they're filming the way you're prompting, you're like,
You
stop
get
judging.
self-conscious, right? Of, oh,
It's like your Google searches, no one wants to see how you Google.
yeah, yeah. So we learned a lot from that episode. We tweaked it. Because you are right. How many developers have spent 1 hour fixing a package or
Yeah,
something that's just not downloading correct? But when you're given 5 hours, that's detrimental, right?
exactly.
And I think, but at least one cool thing that I think you got to experience specifically is you know one of the contestants, Brandon. You mentioned him earlier in our conversation, right? He has his own YouTube channel, AI with Brandon. How were you introduced to Brandon? How was it actually meeting him in person?
Yeah, it was super fun. I think that's also when I heard that he was going to be a contestant at the same show as me, I couldn't believe it because I mean the odds of not only being both. I mean he's much bigger than me on YouTube, so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he's probably going to be invited at some point, especially as he was doubling down on ADK. But being invited to the same episode was just like a super funny coincidence. And then meeting him in person was great. Was great. Initially, I had been speaking to him for many months already because I did like an accelerator where basically you learn how to become a YouTube creator. specifically for teaching how to build with AI and use all that traffic to then try to monetize it either in the form of a community or by selling services, which is what I
Hmm.
do with the Elements. So we had been already talking a lot on that community. We had
Yeah.
daily check-ins. So I had spent a lot of time with him online. So it felt like I knew him super well already to some extent. But then we
Yeah.
never really had a beer to just talk about random stuff outside of, work. So it was fun when we took the Waymo and just drove around. It was just a funny, fun time.
Yeah. It's a nice way to meet someone that you built a relationship with
Exactly.
miles apart, right? Literally oceans apart. But it was funny seeing you both interact as you guys were competing against each
Yeah.
other, really, right, during the episode. I think another interesting thing that I know you sort of benefit from the show is that you demo, right,
Hmm.
what you've built in the show,
Hmm.
externally. What are people's reaction when you tell them about the show and tell them here's, and show them the demo that you did on the show itself?
So I did for sure reuse that code a lot at different events. So I did go to a post-hog and Supabase event, which is what I was
Nice.
talking about earlier, where I demoed it. And I did get some interesting conversations coming out of that demo. I think overall people are impressed. They're impressed by how much you can do in 5 hours, because doing a demo is one thing, but when you tell them that you're under pressure and you only have so much time to build what I've built, I think this shows them beyond the actual functionality of the demo. It just shows you how you can go from ideating,
Hmm.
thrown a problem, you're being thrown a problem there's a problem being thrown at you, all the way to like figuring out how to build a solution that you can present in 5 hours. Usually this is what people were the most, I think, impressed about, more about the process than the actual demo.
Well, yeah, 100%. I think that everyone knows that with AI, you could build really interesting,
Hmm.
cool things. But I think when you surround yourself with the right tools, and the right tools, it's person by person, obviously. But when you do surround yourself with the tools that make sense for you, it's very interesting to see what people can create, technical or not technical, right? Um, on your side, what have you seen? Has anyone impressed you that maybe doesn't come from a super technical background, but has built things or just used AI in a way that sort of surprised you?
Yeah, I did see. So I have a friend of mine here in Lisbon who's really not technical, and he's very smart, but he likes to say that he's not technical and he's completely clueless. But he's very
He's humble too.
resourceful. Yeah, he's very humble. Yeah, and then he actually built like a super. He runs this community where he's introducing mentors with mentees, and he created a whole job board for them to meet and to, or sorry, for the companies, basically from the mentors to find mentees who are hungry to learn. And he literally just vibe coded this app that he presented. And when we went through it, I was quite impressed. He had connected some automation using another tool. I can't remember the name of it, but he created something quite fancy and sophisticated. But when he was describing it to me before pitching it, before showing it to me, it felt that it was super basic. But then I was like, damn, it's crazy how you can build something that is both valuable for your business and it doesn't take him, much time to build it. And it's actually, it was quite impressive. So yeah, some people build tools around their existing businesses, including people who are not technical at all, and they can try to build some products that they can monetize around their existing activity, which might not be tech related.
I think with tools like Lovable, I mean, there's a bunch that allows, I don't like saying the term non-technical, but I don't have a better word. But folks that maybe aren't like ourselves that are interested on the frameworks, are interested in the models, right? What people are starting to build, and I think it's cool now that AI in general is sort of making more people think like an engineer because they see the computer now as I could tell it to solve a problem for me, right? Whereas I feel just a few years back, a lot of people maybe didn't think of it that way, right? The concept of writing code to do something was just so far fetched for some people,
Exactly.
right? And I think it's really Interesting. I think with the work you're doing at Elements as well, you get that interesting perspective, and the fact that you've worked in so many different industries, so many different countries, right? You have a unique perspective in just how the rest of the world really outside, I'm here in my SF bubble, but the rest of the world still needs a lot of this and are using it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll leave you with my last questions because I think my wife told me that breakfast is going to be ready soon. Do you believe in AGI?
I think we will never agree on it. It's like somehow some people will still manage to be convinced, just like flat earthers, they will feel left out and they will justify in one way or another that according to a certain evaluation framework that the numbers are off, or we will never agree, and it will never be like a universal. If it happens, some people, wrong,
I
if
like
that
that
makes
answer.
sense.
No, it makes sense. It's noisy right now.
Yeah.
Right. And you're in Lisbon. There's no
Mm-hmm.
room for noise here.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Vlad, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks again for, joining the podcast, and, I hope we talk soon.
Yeah, it was super fun. Thanks so much. Really
Take
enjoyed
care.
it. Ciao. Take care.
Today, I am joined by Vladimir de Ziegler. His background is unique. He didn't start in software, actually. He started in finance and mining. Yes, actually that type of mining of gold and silver. Now he's based in Lisbon building AI agents for enterprises. I think he's proof that you don't need a traditional CS degree to make waves in the AI space. We talk about self-education, about him starting his YouTube channel as well as his company, and his philosophy of solving business problems first and using AI second. Here's my conversation with Vlad. Enjoy.